I think it's fair to say that the specific trajectory of Brexit is still filed under TBD. We have a chair? Yeah, go on, bring up another chair. I'll sit with them. I'll sit with these. I'll lower myself, that's fine. Barring the possibility that Theresa May comes up with something incredible unifying plan today, which I'm not going to hold my breath for, we just don't know exactly what form of Brexit is going to happen, or if it is going to happen at all. So taking time to kind of consider each of those points will take far longer we've got today. We've only got 20 minutes. But what we can talk about is what could happen and how you can kind of protect yourself against it. So to kick things off, so next, he's going. He's finding it. He'll find it. All right, I'm going to sit down here. So to kick things off, I'd like you guys to quickly introduce yourself and tell me sort of briefly what you believe is likely to happen. What's the most likely outcome? Other panel. Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. And what do you think is the most likely outcome for Brexit as it stands? Do you want to start, Jazz, or?
Sure.
You can.
Is this working? Is this working? Hello, hello.
Mic on? There we go.
Hello?
There we go. That's it, better.
Hi, my name's Jazz Purewal. I'm an interactive entertainment lawyer at Purewal & Partners, and for the last many months have been spending several days reading, thinking and talking about Brexit and its implications for the interactive entertainment industry. Given what I'm about to say about my thoughts about where Brexit's going to go, I should also say, full disclosure, that I'm a co-founder of Games for EU, which is a grassroots political campaigning group from within interactive entertainment, which is fighting for a pro-Remain voice within interactive entertainment and wider politics. But that's just my personal view, and most of what I'll be talking about is talking about where Brexit is, rather than necessarily where we would like it to be going forward. So, having said that, you have asked me where do I think it's going to go.
Where do you think it's going to go?
So clearly we're in a constitutional crisis, we're in a political crisis right now. There is no clear majority for any route forward. The government's Brexit deal was voted down by 230 votes last week. The government has until January 21st to be making a proposal. Well, actually, it's meant to be making a proposal, but I've just heard from what Craig was saying that that's not going to happen.
Surprise.
Right. So by the end of the month, there will have to be a plan B put forward by the government, but it doesn't seem likely that there is going to be one. So all the indications are that Parliament takes control anyway, and then there'll be between 2 to 3 options put forward for Parliament to vote upon, and if they can't, we'll end up probably in a second referendum.
Craig.
Hi there. So Craig Fletcher originally founded Multiplay, now a games industry investor, advisor. But on my other hat, for full disclosure, I'm also a political candidate. So I'm a member of the Lib Dems. I've stood for election a couple of times. And we're the only party that's adamantly campaigned for remaining in the EU, and still are the only party that's been for that. What do I think is likely to happen? Well, echoing a lot of what Jazz has just said, I think I was on a call with Tom Brake last week, and it sounds very much, we very much believe that there is no majority in the House of Commons for any way forward. So I think we're just going to see a very messy, continued mishandling by Miss May, and we'll see where we end up. But I think the chances of a new referendum are about 50-50 about now. So it's a very good chance to be a people's vote, as it's commonly known. I think that's probably going to be the only way to remove the deadlock, and hopefully we'll be able to reverse course out of this this disaster. Another mic needs working.
One more mic.
There we go. Hello?
Swap it in.
Hi. Yeah, I'm not a politician or a lawyer. So I'm a CEO of Bulkhead Interactive, and about 5 years ago we started a studio making bad first-person puzzlers on Xbox One. And then after 5 years we've made a couple of games now, and they've always been a little bit successful. And I decided that after Brexit, being increasingly frustrated, decided to open a studio in Munich. We're from Derby, which is one of the highest places in the UK for voting leave. So it's incredibly frustrating to be a game developer there. And to Munich, we all of a sudden it started paying off, and we managed to hire Europeans, and it just started working straight away. So I won't really comment on like what I think is going to happen, because I think both your answers boil down to, we don't know. A second referendum would be a really good idea, which is kind of what I feel like everyone in the room kind of agrees. But right now there are very real issues that we're experiencing as British people living in Europe and trying to open more studios in all. We're trying to remain incredibly, proud British developers. But yeah, as in what's going to happen, we don't know.
Don't know. Okay, fair enough. So possibly people's vote, constitutional crisis, don't know. That's fine. So the question I've got is even if we did just binned Article 50 today, it's like Theresa May went, actually I'm bored of this, I want to do something else. Got rid of that, and we just stopped it, and we had a people's vote, whatever. Have we already done damage? We've already seen investors come off or moving money elsewhere. There's definitely been a culture of kind of hostility towards foreigners coming to the country one way or another. Do you think we've already done damage, and have we seen damage from the games industry as yet, specifically, from decision?
I have a sort of direct example of, so we'd only just opened our music studio, and we were hiring this great Belgian UE4 programmer, and he ended up, we were going to hire him, we're offering the job, and just the day before it to him, he said, guys, I'm going to pull out, Brexit's too uncertain, I don't want to move to the UK, I don't know. And people, as all of you know, people are the most important thing in the industry. And we just happened to say, well, we've got this German studio we're just setting up, and he was like, yeah, I'll visit, and he visited, and a day later, he was just like, yeah, I'd love to work here. So within sort of 3 months, our German company just paid off. But that was just right at the start. So I'm terrified of what's going to happen later.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is really affecting it on a.
So you've seen on a practical level already, from a recruitment perspective, it's impacted you. I mean, Craig or Jazz, have you heard or seen of any specific examples similar to that, or is it more anecdotal?
Yeah, not specific examples I could put a finger on right now, but I've certainly heard it, and not just in the games industry. I mean, obviously about the games industry, but it's a wider issue in general. I mean, you hear about the NHS. I mean, the levels of nurses coming to the UK is at an all-time low. And the thing is, I've spoken to quite a few businesses that are really worried, especially businesses that I think the highest one I had was 80% non-UK staff.
Sure.
And because we rely very heavily on highly skilled, very mobile labour that will up sticks and move to Canada just as much as move to Germany, and that's a real problem. Uncertainty breeds this problem. I do think even if we were to revoke Article 50 tomorrow, a lot of damage has been done, not just to the people wanting to come and work here, but to the credibility of the UK as a stable place to come work and do business. And investment impacted. It has been impacted.
Sure.
I mean, we found it easier to raise money for companies in the Netherlands than we have some of our UK-based companies, for example, because there's no uncertainty there. Uncertainty is the biggest thing investment.
Yeah.
Let me try to start with some of the positive fundamentals before talk about where things stand right now. So the games industry in the UK has still a number of fundamental resiliences. It has the English language, it has talent, it has the size of its local market, it has its historical ties and the argument about being a bridge between the US and the EU. It's generated a lot of success, and so it's still likely to be a place people want to come to work, particularly still from an international perspective. The UK has done really well to bring international businesses to the UK. But the problem is that at least part of that was because of the UK's close links to the EU. So the UK's this sort of fuzzy feeling around the world that we're stable and we're sensible and we get on with things and we have the rule of law. And I wouldn't underestimate how our that fuzzy feeling about the influences a lot of decisions over time. And that's taken a knock. So a combination of the uncertainty, not knowing if we'll still be in the EU, has implications, and this feeling that maybe we're not the investable country that people thought we were can a knock. Now there are still investments happening, there are still things happening, but it gets harder. So for example, a number of IPOs have been put off in the UK of gaming companies because of Brexit, and those companies which have floated have been having more questions asked of them about their resilience and the impact on their stock price if there's a crash-out Brexit. So we are seeing impact, and one of the problems we've got in the games industry is a lack of data. We haven't had any real surveys or any real analysis done, but anecdotally, it is harder to bring people across. If you're a successful monetization expert for free-to-play games, and you've got your pick of choices of European gaming companies, why would you come to the UK if it's not absolutely certain your family can still live here next year? It's a problem.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come on to talent in a second, because I think we're talking about solutions of hedging it. But before, in the interests of balance, on question time, think of me as your Fiona Bruce, if you will. Is it all...
Just not as pretty or as
not
intelligent,
as pretty or as intelligent,
okay, any other common features.
An uglier, thicker Fiona Bruce, that's what we're going for, thank you. But is it all negative? I mean, are there any upsides? We've obviously been a lot of promises from very respectable gentlemen and ladies about how amazing it's going to be. Could there be any upsides from Brexit if it does go ahead? Would there be anything? Is it like people talk about like taxes or whatever? Is there anything conceivable that we can see as a benefit?
I mean, there could be, right? So the arguments that are put forward is that the UK would become more focused on free trade, which means focusing with the developing countries. It means more trade, for example, with India, with the US. And in fairness, those are countries which are seeing economic booms right now. And if you look at, for example, say what the things one hears about on, say, PocketGamer right now, there's a lot of interest in India, there's a lot of interest in China. So you can see how the argument made forward that we could have more privileged links with those countries going forward. That's one argument. I'm going to try to avoid knocking down the arguments I've just put forward, but that's an argument.
Yes, okay. We're just interested in balance.
Another one that was put forward in 2016 before the referendum was video games tax relief. The argument that video games tax relief in the UK, which applies to all different games companies regardless of platform, that's restricted by EU rules. So the reason that it's at the level that it's at is you won't allow it to go higher. So one of the arguments put forward in the industry was without the EU controls anymore, could video games tax relief go higher? And the significance of that is it's basically a subsidy to games production. So more games could be made more cheaply without EU state aid rules. I'm not endorsing either of those arguments, but of the arguments that I heard, those were the most convincing to make Brexit a success.
Okay.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to go with, was you remove the de minimis state aid limit and suddenly you become a Canada in Europe for video games development. Is that an option?
Yeah.
Does that counteract all the other
well, surely
problems?
Be a Canada Plus.
Yes, Canada Plus. Let's go. That one.
So just to skip on. So I think there is possible if it's not going to be all if it goes there, but also in the situation we are now, and the possibility does go ahead, I think how can companies kind of protect themselves? Kind of one of us. So if your talent and recruitment is clearly, as you say, talent is at the heart of this industry. We need skilled people. How can a UK company kind of hedge or protect against this? You've set up you've done it. You've set up a studio overseas, and that's worked for you. Is that what more companies should be doing?
I mean, it's got to be specific to every single. For us, we were sort of 30, 25-year-olds, and I didn't want to live in Derby anymore, and so I was like, I'm going to Munich because it's one of the highest.
I'm saying nothing.
Yeah, it's like it was about living in a nice place, and we figured that if we had. It was a challenge to get talent. We had to live in a really nice place to say, hey, if you come to us, you can go skiing or whatever on the weekend. And so that was a main reason. But there are benefits, and so one thing that we're seeing now as a benefit is like having a bank account in euros and just something a bit more stable for predictions. We're sort of realizing for the first time that working in pounds is quite difficult when you're working with big numbers. It's fluctuating. It is really difficult. Like we were trying to decide our salaries the other day, and I was like, "Can we decide at 3 p.m. because it's £300 higher?" And like it's really difficult. But in terms of should other companies be doing it, I don't think there's any negatives in trying it. My advice was just speaking. One thing that I thought the German county states have that's much better is we have Games Bavaria in Munich, which does, in my opinion, slightly more than Yuki, but on a specific regional level.
Yeah.
And that was like...
Your mic's gone. Your mic's...
Yeah,
hello?
my mic.
It's gone back in. It's fine, yeah. Okay. Do you have anything? Is there anything specific that specific?
Well, certainly advising companies about this. Very specific. It's hard to make generalisations because if a company's got 100% UK workforce, it's like, well, you're probably more looking at hedging the currency risk than anything else. Forward contracts, things like that, in terms of hedging moving forward. But EU countries offering some quite interesting deals to attract tech businesses over. I've heard Portugal's offering Portugal citizenship to tech businesses moving over there, for example. I don't know what the rules are about that, but your almost reverse problem is if you move your UK workforce over to Munich, there's no guarantee you can stay in the event of a no-deal Brexit, for example. You've got the reverse issue that we have in the UK. So I think no one wants to see a no-deal Brexit because it's just a nightmare for everyone involved.
On that, we have been moving a lot of our UK staff, and that's a very real issue for things like my driving license, as soon as Brexit happens, becomes just invalid. So what I did was actually I just went and got a German European one. So I'm going to be in this grey area where I've got a European license I shouldn't have, but it's a German one.
So I'll say a few things. So take your own legal advice, blah, 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 as well as what these guys were saying about specific to your own circumstances. Speaking with the Games for EU voice, because we're explicitly pro-Remain, we don't want to see a no-deal Brexit. But if you are going to see a no-deal Brexit, you need to think about having an EU presence, and you need to think about it now. You need to think about setting up an office, because if there is a no-deal Brexit, you're obliged to see through a member state. You're obliged to have a local representative for data protection reasons. You're obliged almost certainly to start running your servers through European Union member state, because otherwise the hassle you'll be involved with will be nightmarish. Pony up for spending on lawyers, and believe you me, we don't want the money. We don't want the money. We don't want the money. Right, point me on that. But more seriously, with only a couple of months left, if there isn't going to be an extension of Article, if we are looking at a no-deal Brexit, most companies need to get into contingency plannings. The multinationals will be okay because most of the time they structure their arrangements to not to be dependent upon any one country right now. But if you're a UK game dev of any size, you need to start thinking about someone with your accountant, talk with your lawyer, and almost certainly have to have a local office set up. And I take no pleasure in saying that.
Okay, we haven't, because this is a speed panel, and this is obviously a debate going for hours and hours, but I've got a couple of questions, but as we've got about 4 or 5 minutes left, I thought I would throw out anybody's got any questions or opinions. I don't know if we've got any pro-Brexiters. You're free to, you're allowed to stay, it's all right, it's fine. But does anybody have a question they'd like to ask or pose on the issue of Brexit, wherever you're from? You have to be from. There was a hand there. I can't quite see. The microphone's coming. Yes, sorry. This massive shining light in my eyes.
Hi there. My name is Vicky Potts from White Pot Studios. I'm based in Belfast. I was wondering if you guys have any opinions or ideas on how Brexit would affect Irish gaming companies.
I think they don't know they don't know down the road. Like no one knows.
I think pretty much all the same situation, because Northern Ireland is part of the UK, so it all will be very similar to what we've just said to you. There's some very specific issues to talk about, like the border, and how will trade happen, and in a hard Brexit, what happens? Do we go back to having checkpoints and things like that? It could affect you personally over there. Obviously, no one wants to see that happening, but basically everything for you in Northern Ireland, I think. I don't think there's any particular...
I'll venture one opinion, which is you may actually end up being one of the most fortunate people in the room, because on the basis that there is some form of resolution with the European Union, we don't know what, almost certainly that's going to involve what's known as the backstop. And the backstop is basically shorthand for Northern Ireland remains in aspects of the European Union that the rest of the UK does not. So actually, from a continuity perspective, your business may be better insulated than other businesses. And actually, one of the things I've just begun hearing about is a couple of studios from the mainland, from Great Britain, talking about setting up in Belfast rather than setting up in Belgium, say, for that reason. But it's still not something your business can really bank upon, because if there's a no-deal Brexit, then Northern Ireland is impacted harder than anybody else. Okay,
fair enough. Good question. Okay, we are going to have to... Is there any other questions? I can't see. The light is blinding me. Fine. I'm just going to the last point, because I'm going to have to hand over to a separate panel. I want to kind of go back to the initial introduction and so obviously at the moment, Brexit is up in the air. It's not a done deal, and we have an opportunity to exert influence and bring our views to bear. So, Jazz, I know especially for you, but I mean others are involved as well. What can the games industry that doesn't want to see Brexit do about it? What can they actively do to now to help the crusade or the battle against this nonsense? That's all yours.
So for the games industry, one of our great strengths and one of our great weaknesses is that we haven't cared about politics. So whether you're in the audience and you are pro-Brexit or you are anti-Brexit, whichever it may be, this whole process is showing that we haven't had a voice Fisheries, despite the fact that our industry is 2 or 3 times bigger than fisheries, fisheries is dominating the debate, automotive is in the debate in the way that the interactive entertainment industry and the creative industries have not. So first and foremost, make your view heard, write to your MP, write to your industry associations. Even if you are non-UK national and you care about Brexit, you should still be writing and making your voice heard. That's a point I'll say on a neutral basis. Now, if, like me, and this is just my personal view, you happen to be anti-Brexit, there's more you can be doing. All of those things, be writing about Brexit, write articles, come and talk to me, come and talk to George from Games for EU about how you can help specifically the entertainment industry. But like I said, whether you are for or against, it impacts our industry in this country too much to not be involved. So do that one thing, which is more than social media, that asserts your voice. And you'd be surprised of a knife edge we're going to come to in the next 2 or 3 weeks, where every vote in Parliament matters. And all of them, regardless of what they say, they are listening to what people say to them.
Okay. So I think on that note, although it was short, but it was very impactful. I'm sure you can talk to Jazz, you can talk to Craig, and indeed talk to Joe, who's about his experiences out of this. It sounds like he's cleverly positioned himself to deal with all this. But can I have a round of applause, please, from my panel.